I'm going to start things off with our first question, which is, how has COVID-19 affected you, your family, or your community as well?
That's a big question.
The big question.
Affected myself, my husband. We both had to immediately start working from home, which we felt fortunate that we were able to do that. We have 2 teenagers, so we turned their world upside down, and they were home for a really long time, from, that, like everyone else, that March of 2020, and then even that next school year for most of it. So it definitely impacted our environment, our mental health, just the way we did everything, all of our family gatherings, like other people. And then, several of us have had COVID, some on the second round. So it's definitely, for my small little family in my home, the 4 of us impacted us. But then even, of course, broadly, just the other people that we interacted with all the time. And I think, like many people, we're not unique, just didn't realize how different life would be to not be able to leave our house and to stay here in these walls, and to try to create offices at home, because we did not work from home before. Our kids were not schooling from home. So to create space for 4 people where we all had our individual time, because we were on Zoom and the kids were on, I think they used Google Meets all day, every day, except for the weekends, was pretty challenging. And just trying to make sure, for me, everybody was okay all the time. So it definitely impacted us in so many different ways.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that one is a large one, since we've been going through it for
that's a big
so many years now. But I'm going to switch gears a little bit to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine. So have you been vaccinated for the COVID-19, or do you plan to be vaccinated?
Yes, I have been vaccinated. I have been boosted twice. I recently got the brand new booster. So so definitely was something I was really eager to do.
Absolutely. And what were kind of your initial reasons for doing so, or anything that you want to share about that? Or have you, had any views kind of change about it once you received it?
So I have MS, multiple sclerosis. So with that, I knew I felt at least compromised already, and I was scared and worried about how COVID would impact me, but also wanted to make sure the vaccine was safe for me. So checked in with my neurologist, my primary care. Neither one had any objections to me getting it. And I think as soon as I heard that, I definitely knew it was something that I wanted to do, and wanted to do as soon as possible, because I just felt like I wanted to be safe. I wanted to be protected, but I also wanted to live my life again. And it felt like that was, the way to especially way back in, I guess it was early 2021. It felt like, okay, if we got this vaccine, things could go back to normal, is what we thought, at least for me.
Yeah.
So it represented so many things, but definitely I was scared of getting COVID, and I was scared with my MS, what it would do, how it would impact me. Would I die if I got it? I mean, all that went through my head. So after checking in with both of my healthcare doctors, I made the decision that I knew it was the right thing to do, and wanted to do it as quickly as I could.
Sure, absolutely. And what was your kind of experience getting the vaccine, like, making the appointment, kind of going through the process?
Oh God, making the appointment was so stressful. So I'm guessing you remember when, we had the mega sites and would get online. It was so stressful. We'd get online every day, all of us. And when I say all of us, like me, my husband, my parents, my sisters, because we were trying to just get appointments, and try and get appointments for the most vulnerable people in our family first. So like if anyone got an appointment, we were all online checking with each other, because we wanted my parents to get vaccinated. So I remember that vividly, because you would wait and wait and wait, sometimes hours, and then they would say, we're like not taking anymore. And I would feel like deflated and crushed. And then you check on the mega site. Okay, we're going to open up vaccines on this day at this time. And no matter what I was doing, Julia, I was like, had an alarm set. I would move an appointment. I would cancel something because I knew I needed and wanted to be on, checking, waiting. And again, waiting on my phone, waiting on my laptop, waiting on the kids' Chromebooks, because you could log in from several places. And then you wouldn't get an appointment and you would try it again. So making the appointment was so stressful, and it felt like it took forever. I think it took weeks, but it felt so long. And because there were so many of us, it wasn't just about me, that we wanted to help make appointments for in our family. That was really rough to not be able to just, like you can now, walk into your CVS. Yeah, so that was hard.
Definitely hear that. And, the refreshing constantly and checking other places in the state, what zip code to put in. Yeah.
I was like, I will. And I remember saying, I will drive anywhere. I will drive anywhere in the state. It didn't matter. If I could get an appointment somewhere else, if it was 2 hours away, that was okay. So it really was this, desperate feeling almost of like, we need to get these appointments, and you just couldn't. Yeah, God, that was like, I feel like I forgot about that. That was really rough.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking through that. And I definitely remember those early months and multiple computers, and I hear that. But I know you mentioned, speaking to a few healthcare providers about the vaccine. What did those conversations kind of look like? Who said what?
So speaking with my primary care provider, he was immediately like, well, of course, so I'm 46. I've been with my same primary care since I was 18. I left the pediatrician and went right to him. So this is someone I trust completely. And he was almost like, well, I get it, but why are you asking? Of course, like he just was his answer was so comforting, and yes, get the vaccine and get it as soon as you can. So there wasn't a lot of discussion. But he was open to, what are your concerns? What are your questions? What are you afraid of? And I really, said, well, I'm afraid of any of the side effects that might impact my MS. But I wasn't really afraid of side effects in general. I just wasn't. And he said, I feel really comfortable with you getting it, but I want you to check with your neurologist. He said, and then I want you to like call me back and follow up. And so I really kind of took that. And then my next call was to the neurologist, who has been my doctor much shorter period of time than my primary care. And that conversation, it went well, but it was a little different. He had asked me like how I was doing, have I had any recent symptoms around MS? Because patients who were in the middle of a flare up, he said we would have had a different conversation. And I was doing really well. So it was almost like, okay, if you were in the middle of a flare, if you were having any new symptoms, we're going to move to a part B of this conversation, but it sounds like you're doing really well. And I'm not concerned. And I think you're going to be just fine. So, but those were conversations that we had, and they were really important to me. And as soon as I had those, I felt like, okay, I could go forward with getting the vaccine. So, yeah. But I was lucky to have healthcare providers who took the time to really talk that through and to understand my concerns and my worries, and to not discount those, but to instead say, I feel comfortable with you doing this. And they all went back to, but it's your decision, so if you don't feel like you want to do it right now, even though we recommend it, we feel comfortable with it. If you want to talk this through a little bit later in a few months, we can have another conversation. So, yeah, I almost wanted them to just say, go do it right now. I almost like leaving it a little bit in my hands, which is a good thing, was almost like, I don't want to make the wrong choice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about for sure. And that's great to hear too, that, you had those conversations. But were there any other kind of sources of information that you trusted, that you turned to find more information about the vaccine, or where you could find one, things like that?
Yeah, so I definitely was constantly looking on the Department of Health website, reading anything that came out. I signed up for, all of the alerts, on my phone and my email. So I was getting bombarded with information, but I felt like it was good information. I felt like it was trusted information. And then anyone in my life who was a healthcare provider, I was constantly checking in with them. My very best friend is an APN, so I was always checking in with her. You know, is there anything different, anything new, anything behind the scenes I don't know?
Yeah.
What's going on behind the curtain? What can you tell me?
Mm.
We also had, you know, a really good friend who's worked closely with us at our organization with a nurse. So in addition to my healthcare providers, I would also go to the people I knew who I trusted their opinion, and I just always wanted to have the most up to date education and information. So, and I feel like things were changing all the time, and that's what was really frustrating. Is that I felt like there were changes, or I felt like you would hear something from one person, and even though I knew it wasn't true, I was like, well, I better look into this, because what if it is? So, yeah, but my sources were really Department of Health, the healthcare providers who were personal friends, and then of course my own providers.
Okay. So going back to when you were first making that initial appointment and how difficult that just was, and like you said, just in desperation, right? Looking at any possible openings. How would you say, like looking at it now, are COVID-19 vaccines available in your community, or are there any kind of existing barriers or challenges that are still going on?
They're so available now. It's so different. When I wanted to get the vaccine, the new booster, bivalent, how do you say it?
Which one? The bivalent
Yes,
booster?
bivalent.
Yes.
I just went on CVS website and made an appointment and walked in, and I was there 5 minutes, and I was so looking at how it is today. And even those first set of boosters were really easy because you could get them at your pharmacy. You didn't have to go into the mega site or a vaccine site specifically. You know, it felt like the pharmacy just felt different. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, more accessible now. It's easy to make the appointments, and it's just night and day from what it was. And all across the board, the healthcare providers who gave the vaccines were just the most lovely people ever from the very beginning, where, you know, I can't imagine what they were going through with people coming in all day, every day, and they were exposing themselves, and they were just fantastic to now when you sit and have it at the pharmacy, and they take time to talk and ask if you have any questions. And so just, you know, I know that's not one of the questions, but it just sticks out. These individuals have just been like fantastic all across the board. Yeah,
that's really important to hear, and you know, especially about your experience going there, and to know that, you know, that they're there for you and helping the process go is so good to hear.
When I got my vaccine in, I guess it was maybe February of 2021, and like as soon as that shot went in my arm, I started like sobbing, crying. And because my uncle had died of COVID just like 2 weeks before. And I thought, God, if he could have just lived like 2 weeks more, he would have gotten this vaccine. I felt so grateful. And I think I was crying because I felt grateful. I felt guilty. I felt like, why me? It was like such a, sorry, it was just such a feeling. I know that like the healthcare provider, so where I'm going with the story is that the nurse who gave me the vaccine was so wonderful. And I told her, I was like, I'm trying because I'm so grateful. I'm like, I'm okay, I'm not having a reaction. Because they're watching you like, oh, you know, 15 minutes, and I was just like crying, and I was by myself because you couldn't really like go in with, you know, it wasn't like you could go, you know, come in with me with someone else. And I just like told her that. I was like, you know, my uncle died 2 weeks ago. I wish he were here to get the vaccine. And she was so wonderful, so lovely. And as a mental health provider, you hope that other people are providing emotional support in this setting. And I just remember she just sat with me extra, and it just got me talking. It was just, you know, really, really and that's what I
talking through. No, yeah.
For what, you know, you're doing. And before I knew it, she was like, well, your 15 minutes is up, but
you could stay. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so just that feeling of you know, like once that shot went in my arm, I was like, oh, you know, just felt so lucky. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing that. And let me know if you want to take a break or
No, I'm
feel
okay.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry also to hear about your loss, and I can totally hear your feeling, and how having that total well-rounded support through that
Yeah.
appointment must have been so meaningful.
Yeah. The nurses were so great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that too. And I want to ask too, so I know you had mentioned, kind of going to the Department of Health, like straight to the horse's mouth for information about the vaccine. And do you think that there's any way that maybe our state or local health departments could improve messaging or communications about the vaccine now? Anything that you think should be done differently?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of information out there,
Mm,
but I'm someone who is on the internet every day.
mm,
I have a television in my house and there's commercials that run constantly. But I think of other individuals that have disparities around technology,
mm.
who are maybe living unhoused, who aren't, checking the internet or watching commercials on TV that really do run a lot if you've noticed.
Yeah.
Or have the opportunity to go to a place that is providing information. Although I do definitely see still, like, even some of the bus wraps, and just information when you're out there in the supermarket. So
Mhm.
I feel like they've done a really good job of getting information out there. Um, but I also know there's individuals who are just don't have access to that information the way others do.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know what they could do more of, because I really think between internet and alerts on your phone and commercials and just seeing information in the public and in the community,
Mhm.
there is a lot out there. I just hope it stays that way. Like, I hope it
Yeah.
does. It's not like, okay, well, it's in the rear view, so we don't have to provide as much, because I think that, you know, there may be folks who weren't ready up until
Mm,
a certain point to get vaccinated, and they still need to see this information,
mm.
and this truthful, honest information about the vaccine, and just
Sure.
continuing to provide, you know, task forces and focus groups and ways to get into communities, and so almost like, don't let off the gas with the education. I think it's there, and I think the information has been there and it's abundant, but not everybody is going to have the same access to the information. So I hope that they don't let off and that they keep on moving forward. And I hope no one gets to a point where they're like, all right, well, it's as good as we're going to get with vaccines, so we can move on to something else. Like, no, I hope this information's out there all the time. The same way the flu vaccine information is out there all the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
The shingles, pneumonia, like, I can't tell you how many times a day I see or hear something that,
Yeah.
I hope it stays, because I think people need that information
Keep it
consistently.
going,
But
just
that might
consistent.
make the
Mhm.
change in someone's opinion. Who knows? If they
Yeah.
just not to get vaccinated until a certain point, they might say, okay, I read something today and I looked at it a different way, or I had a different view on it, and now it's the time. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And do you think that state or local organizations, in our communities could contribute more, so that people who maybe haven't made that choice yet, they're not sure, just to have more confidence in the vaccine and what they've heard about it?
Yeah, I think definitely continuing to have groups in communities where maybe the vaccine numbers aren't the highest, or for folks that still have hesitancy. I think, yeah, continuing to provide resources and funding in those communities, and whether it's in churches or community centers or
Mhm.
schools, I think that has to continue, and I think those resources have to go in that direction. And having resources that are multilingual, I think, is super important also. So yeah, I think there's still a lot that can be supported, and that could be done. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And before we stop the recording, is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't covered in the questions, or I didn't ask you? Anything else
No,
about
just,
your experience?
thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. I feel like anyone who maybe is worried or hesitant about getting the vaccine, if they hear from people who have gotten it and are okay, and they hear positive stories, I think that's a good starting place. For someone like me to say, I got the vaccine, I got it the first round, I got the booster, I got the new booster. And I know everyone's experience is different, but I did okay. And I didn't have any side effects and I did well. And I'm glad I did it. Maybe one person may hear that from someone else. And those stories, I think, are sometimes as equally important as the information that's put out. So I don't know, just happy to share. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing today.